been 2 weeks since the WCRI conference recently held in Boston. I'm Michael Stack with AMAX, and today I want to give you some highlights and recap from that recent conference, from the notes that I took and the perspective that I had on it. Okay, so the second session was about worker outcomes and what impacts, based on studies and research, to define the best outcome. What are those factors that we can address? For me, this was the most interesting and impactful session for what I do, which is work with employers and insurance brokers on educating best-in-class programs. This session is one that I found extraordinarily valuable to get an understanding of what are those things that impact the outcomes that we can address at the beginning of a claim and make sure our success is that much more likely. Okay, so this was a study I've quoted a number of times. It was published by WCRI a few years back, and they came out with a study and said the biggest single factor based on their research that impacts the outcome of that claim is trust. The biggest single factor that impacts the outcome of a claim is the amount of trust between an employee and an employer. Hugely important point, hugely important factor to understand. Now, we've seen that one before. Glenn Pransky from Liberty Mutual gave a presentation about some of their research and their studies. I found it extraordinarily interesting and valuable. And here's what they came up with. Two different things that impact their outcomes. One of the biggest factors, all things being equal, is how does the supervisor respond to the injured worker at the moment that claim is reported. So I'm going to say that again. How does the supervisor respond to the injured worker at the moment that that claim is reported? Do they respond with blame and anger and frustration? There's that lack of trust there. They're not trusting that the employee maybe said they got injured and they say, yeah, right, you didn't get injured, get back to work. Or how could you do that wrong? You are now in trouble. That lack of trust there. So how does that supervisor respond to that injured worker at the time of injury? All things being equal, if they respond positively, it's going to have a significantly better claim outcome. If they respond negatively, significantly worse claim outcome. So that was number one, was how does the supervisor respond to the injured worker at the time that claim is reported? Number two, how does the insurance adjuster respond, or how is that first interaction with the injured worker go? Are they using big insurance words that the injured worker doesn't understand, things like adjudication and calling him a claimant and all these different things that really foster this lack of trust that they're going to be taken care of? So if there's all these things that they don't understand and they don't know what's going to happen, what are they going to do? They're going to make sure their rights are protected. They're going to call an attorney, and they're going to be going down this path, which makes the claim that much more complicated because they had a poor interaction with their supervisor and their adjuster is causing them all this adjudication. They're saying, I don't know what's going on. I better look out for myself. So how are you responding to the injured worker? How are those communication interactions, things to train on, things to work on? Here's the next piece, which I thought was extremely interesting and something you need to impact into your program today. Starting today, do this every single claim. Here's what it was. They asked this question. It's a highly predictive question of the outcome of that claim. Do you think you'll be back to work within 4 weeks without any restrictions? Do you think you will be back to work within 4 weeks without any restrictions? Do you think you'll be back to work in 4 weeks without any restrictions? Highly, highly predictive question to ask of what that outcome of the claim is. If they say no, then you get to ask them why. Why don't you think he'll be back to work? And you can bring in additional resources and support to drive that. If they say yes, then they're setting that expectation in their own mind. It's only going to drive that success to get them back to work. So highly predictive question and response to that claim's outcome. Do you think you'll be back to work within 4 weeks without any restrictions? Start asking that question in every single one of your claims today.